Hunter Biden, Burisma, and the scandal that would not go away. When Republicans say, "What about Hunter Biden's laptop?" they are usually pointing to one of the most persistent political controversies of the Biden era. Hunter Biden sitting on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, while his dad was vice president. There are a couple of other controversies that this references, but I'm focusing on Burisma today. At the center of the story is a basic question. Did Hunter Biden use his father's name to make money from foreign companies? The answer to that is fairly easy. Yes, he almost certainly benefited from being Joe Biden's son. But the harder question is this. Did Joe Biden, while serving as vice president, take official government action to help his son's business interests? That is where the story becomes complicated. The Burisma controversy is not one scandal. It has several overlapping stories. It is a story about Ukraine after its 2014 revolution, a story about a Ukrainian gas company with a controversial founder, a story about Hunter Biden joining a foreign company's board while his father was not only vice president, but also actively shaping U.S. policy toward Ukraine. It is a story about a Ukrainian prosecutor named Viktor Shokin, who was pushed out of office after pressure from Vice President Joe Biden, the Obama administration, European allies, and international institutions. And then it becomes a story about Donald Trump, impeachment, Hunter Biden's laptop, congressional investigations, criminal prosecutions, and a presidential pardon. So today, we're going to walk through the timeline very carefully. What happened? What do Republicans allege? What was actually proven? And where does the evidence stop? I'm Doris Smith, an independent journalist. This is the Journalism of Everything. To understand Burisma, we have to start in Ukraine in 2014. In February 2014, Ukraine's pro-Russian president fled the country after months of protests. Ukraine was politically unstable, economically vulnerable, and caught between Russia on one side and the United States and Europe on the other. Russia annexed Crimea in March 2014. War broke out in eastern Ukraine. The United States and its allies were trying to support Ukraine's new government while also pushing anti-corruption reforms. This matters because Ukraine's corruption problem was not just a talking point. It was central to U.S. policy. The Obama administration won in Ukraine to clean up its government, reform its prosecutor's office, and reduce the influence of oligarchs. Joe Biden, as vice president, became one of the Obama administration's leading figures on Ukraine policy. So when Hunter Biden joined the board of a Ukrainian energy company in 2014, the timing was immediately sensitive. Part 2, Hunter Biden joins Burisma. In spring of 2014, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas company. Burisma was connected to Mykola Zlochevsky, a Ukrainian businessman and former government official under the Yanukovych administration. Zlochevsky had faced corruption scrutiny in Ukraine and abroad and faced many corruption scandals during his time, both in government and on the board with Burisma. Most recently, an FBI informant claimed Zlochevsky paid $5 million each to Hunter and Joe Biden, but the informant, Alexander Smirnov, was later charged with lying to the FBI, and prosecutors believe that he made up the bribery story. Hunter Biden was not an expert on Ukraine. He was not an energy expert. He was a lawyer, a lobbyist, and a businessman with a very famous last name. And that is the first major ethical problem. Hunter Biden was the son of the Vice President of the United States, and his father was involved in U.S. policy toward Ukraine. Burisma, meanwhile, was operating in a country where the United States was deeply involved. So even before we get to criminal allegations, this arrangement created a serious appearance of conflict. Republicans would later argue that Hunter Biden was hired for one reason: access to the Biden name. Democrats would often respond that Hunter Biden was a private citizen and that there was no proof Joe Biden changed U.S. policy to help Burisma. Both things can be true at the same time, but it definitely is not a good look, and appearances are important when it comes to determining conflicts of interest. Hunter's role can be ethically questionable, while the more serious claim that Joe Biden corruptly acted to protect Burisma still needs evidence. And that distinction is important. Part 3, who was Shokin? Now we get to Viktor Shokin. Shokin became Ukraine's prosecutor general in 2015. In theory, his office had authority over corruption investigations, including issues involving Burisma and its owner. And this is where Republican allegations focus. Their argument is Hunter Biden was on Burisma's board. Burisma had legal problems. Shokin was the prosecutor general. Joe Biden pressured Ukraine to fire Shokin. Therefore, Republicans argue Joe Biden may have pushed for Shokin's removal to protect Burisma and indirectly Hunter Biden. That is the allegation. But the broader context complicates it. At the time, Shokin was widely criticized by Western governments, international institutions, and Ukrainian anti-corruption activists. The criticism was not that he was too aggressive. The criticism was that he was not aggressive enough. The United States, the European Union, International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF, and others wanted Ukraine to make anti-corruption reforms. Shokin was seen by many of Ukraine's Western backers as an obstacle to those reforms. So when Joe Biden pushed for Shokin's removal, he was not acting alone. He was carrying out official U.S. policy backed by many Western allies. But that does not erase the conflict of interest concern created by Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board. It does weaken the simplified claim that Biden single-handedly removed a prosecutor because that prosecutor was about to expose Hunter Biden. Part 4, Biden pressures Ukraine. In late 2015 and early 2016, Joe Biden pressured Ukrainian leaders to remove Shokin. Biden later publicly described threatening to withhold a $1 billion U.S. loan guarantee unless Ukraine moved forward on reforms, including replacing Shokin.
Good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was 6 hours. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
This clip has become central to Republican arguments. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. Republicans often present that as a confession, but Biden's defenders argue that it was not a confession of corruption. It was a public description of official U.S. policy. And again, that policy was supported by other U.S. officials and international partners. In March of 2016, Ukraine's parliament voted to remove Viktor Shokin. Republicans saw this as a key moment. Biden pressured Ukraine, Shokin was removed, and Hunter Biden's company avoided scrutiny. Biden's defenders saw it differently. Shokin was removed because he was ineffective and corrupt, and his removal was part of a broader anti-corruption effort. This disagreement becomes the core of the Burisma scandal. If you like this content, please consider subscribing. Part 5. What was Burisma actually getting from Hunter Biden? Even if Joe Biden did not corruptly intervene for Burisma, there is still a serious question. What was Burisma paying Hunter Biden for? Republicans argue that Hunter Biden was, quote, selling the brand. That phrase became especially important after testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer. Republicans highlighted Archer's testimony to argue that Joe Biden was the brand that Hunter was selling around the world. But the testimony was more nuanced than the political sound bites. Archer did say that Hunter Biden's value included the Biden family name, but he also testified that he was not aware of Joe Biden changing policy to benefit Hunter's business interests. And this is the recurring pattern in the Burisma story. There is plenty of evidence of access, name dropping, poor judgment, and influence peddling concerns. But there is a gap between that and proving that Joe Biden took a bribe or changed U.S. policy for money. That gap is where the political argument lives. Part 6. The story goes quiet until Trump. After Shokin's removal in 2016, the Burisma issue did not immediately dominate American politics. Hunter Biden remained on Burisma's board until 2019. Then Donald Trump made the issue central to national politics. In July 2019, President Trump spoke with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. During that call, Trump asked Zelensky to look into the Bidens and Burisma. And this became the basis of Trump's first impeachment. Democrats argued that Trump was using the power of the presidency to pressure a foreign government into investigating a domestic political rival. Trump and his defenders argued that he was simply asking Ukraine to investigate corruption. So the Burisma controversy transformed. It was no longer just a Biden family ethics story. It became part of Trump's impeachment. That is one reason this story has never gone away. It became attached to two presidencies, Biden's and Trump's. I am Doris Smith. I'm an independent journalist. This is the journalism of everything. I am a one-woman show doing all of the episode creation, scripting, recording, editing, and promoting the show all by myself. I am also a wife and a mother, and I have a busy, active life outside of journalism. Please consider subscribing and supporting my channel and help me spread the word. I am on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and pretty much everywhere else. Thanks for listening.